how do we, when we're dealing with the fact of no staff, how do we help businesses recognise what their core strengths are to be able to make them an employer of choice, and how powerful that is in this time at the moment?
Over the past couple of years, we caught up with the Restaurant and Catering Industry Association CEO Wes Lambert quite a few times, talking about industry issues, the intersection between industry and government, and all kinds of policy positions. There was a lot to talk about. Wes has moved on, and this is a great opportunity to catch up with the new CEO of Restaurant and Catering, Belinda Clarke. Belinda, congratulations on the role and welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. And there's so much to talk about. I feel like there's never a quiet time in the hospitality industry. How have you hit the ground running? How has it been?
Well, to be honest, I've been working with Wes for the last 3 years, and the last 3 years have certainly been a little bit of a washing machine. I think we all have to agree. And I think, though, we're now moving into a different phase. You know, the next phase is that recovery phase. I think that businesses have had, they've got about $10 billion worth of reservations that they've missed out on in the last couple of years. And now is this new chapter. And they've got this big debt over their head, hangover of debt. And now they're moving through of what do I need to do now? What's my next step? And how am I going to move through this next phase? So I think that we're in a new, different chapter of the recovery of the last few years.
Yeah, well, great to hear the optimism in all of that. I mean, what do you think are the big issues that are facing hospitality businesses at the moment? Well,
I think that if we watch the news and we're talking to our fellow companions, we all know there's two big things, and the number one thing in the entire country has got to be staff. Nobody has any staff. I'm talking to somebody from Perth to Cairns to Brisbane to Tasmania. Every single state has the same issue, and that is a massive lack of staff. I think the next thing that everybody's dealing with is that cost of doing business. We all know that the cost of living is increasing, but that also flows on to the cost of doing business. It's so much harder for businesses now just trying to get through this next phase to say, wow, okay, labour's going up. All right, even if labour isn't going up, the cost of hiring somebody is going up. We know that employees are putting a price tag on their head and saying, well, take it or leave it. We know that we've got energy, we've got rents, there's food costs going up. Everything in every key major part of running a small business, running a hospitality business is increasing, and that is a really tough time.
I mean, it is, and costs are going up, as you say, from all angles. Most employers would want to, be, I guess, making sure that their staff their staff wages are keeping pace with the cost of inflation. Of course, that some of these cost pressures also mean customers aren't spending as much. Perhaps they're not coming at all. What kinds of solutions can you see to this massive crunch?
Well, I think there's been a fear in the last, I'd probably say over 10 years of cost of putting your prices up. There's a portion of the industry that's felt quite confident in doing that, and they have. And then there's a whole portion of the industry that's had a very big fear in what it might do, and they're very loyal to their community and their local customers, and they're quite scared to put their prices up. They're scared to add, a public holiday surcharge. They're scared to add a Sunday surcharge. There's a big fear there, but I think that businesses need to look at what is it costing me to put that on the plate? What is it costing me to deliver that on a weekend, and putting a value to that, and that might mean an increase in what people are having to buy things for. I think we're going to see that as the number one push. I think that we're also seeing businesses be a bit savvy, and they're having to say, well, you know what, I don't have to open on a Sunday, or I don't have to open on a Sunday night, and I won't reopen until a Wednesday. I'll give my staff 2.5 days off, and I'm actually making more money now by doing that. So they're making changes in their business. They're also looking at their menu size, saying, well, maybe I don't need to have this menu size. Maybe I can reduce it. Maybe I can look at different ways of offering my brand and my menu, and how can I offset that? Looking at their beverage component on that. So there's some savvy business operators are making some good changes to be able to counteract that. Is it a long-term solution? I don't think it is, but I think it's certainly going to help them in the long run. And that's what we're educating certainly the industry to do right now, is to make those changes and be brave and confident to do them.
I mean, do you see your role as, I guess, massaging people through a really tricky time, or do you see it as helping to reshape the industry, like perhaps opening on a Sunday isn't the norm, where charging a weekend surcharge perhaps is? Like, do you see it as you sort of offering band-aids or helping to restructure the shape of the industry more broadly?
So I think it's two parts. I think that we've got an opportunity here where there's a real element of human side, of helping people through those confident decisions of how to make a change and to be able to do that. And is this a good idea or a bad idea, or what can I do? I mean, I think that quite often we talk to businesses when they're quite seriously hanging just on a string and a wing and a prayer, hoping that there's another solution out there, and they come to us to say, what should I do? And it's tough. We need people to be making good decisions and being really, really well educated in their decisions to be able to move forward. And the other side is exactly that. It's that whole perception of industry and trying to make a change for the greater good, to be able to educate people moving forward. Because I think that consumers are always going to want to eat on a Sunday. We eat 10 out of 21 meals a week out of house. That's an average. That's a lot. Food and beverage is here to stay. That's one thing that we certainly know. And I know that consumers want it and they need it. So it's about how do we make it work for all.
Yeah, so it's so interesting. There's, as you say, there's always that demand. And I suppose, just the very nature of hospitality, people want to respond to the demand. If their customers want them, they want to be there for them. But yeah, at the same time, obviously it has to work as a business. And I feel like I've said this a few times over the past couple of years, Belinda, but I feel like this current period of rising costs is a real time of reckoning for businesses. I'm hearing some really tough stories from people, who've made it through all the various other challenging waves that we've all gone through. But this latest one, whether it's the gas bill or it's the, impending award wage rises, whether it's, simply, looking at the fresh produce list every day and just wondering how on earth they're going to make that stack up. I mean, are you hearing that this particular period is really tough, that this is actually the one where a number of businesses are going to, finally say, no, this is too hard?
So again, there's two sides to that. There's, I spoke to a restaurant operator who has been around, well known throughout the entire country, who said, look, I've seen this before, 25 years ago, we're in a very similar situation. We can work through this. It's going to be tough, but it's absolutely workable. And then you've got quite a few business operators that we see now. They don't go into this eyes wide open. They go in saying, I want work-life balance. I haven't got a business plan. It's going to be great. I love the smell of coffee. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to open a cafe. And they don't have a plan. And I think it's also those business operators that don't have that plan and they aren't able to lean into this and be able to reassess and be able to make changes. And I think change is the biggest word. I'm certainly not going to use the P word, but change is certainly what we need to be embracing, and we have to keep embracing it. And I'm so proud of those businesses that do that. They have to keep doing it because we are all doing it. And the only way to get through this is to regularly reassess, look at what is working, what's not working, and make the change that is required, and to be confident in making that change.
I mean, but it's tough though, because, 25 years ago, yes, inflation, economic pressures, but that wasn't off 2 years of a pandemic and shutdowns and all the other stuff that we know has depleted businesses financially, emotionally, in all other ways. I mean, yeah, I think this is a particularly tough period. And
the one state that is actually embracing this the best? The one state in the entire country, you know what it is? It's Victoria. They are the ones that got hit the hardest, and they are the ones that are saying, don't talk to me about COVID. Just let me, focus on the future. Let's move through this. Now, will we see, businesses close? 100%. There's enough is enough. And I think that they've got to that point where they say, I don't know, why did I think this was a good idea? I can't do it. It's not working. And they're going to have to make that decision, and they might, close their doors. We're seeing a huge amount of acquisitions right now. And I think that it is an incredibly tough time. But I honestly can also see those businesses that are making those changes, the positive impacts it's making to them. And I know there's a lot of positive stories to tell. It's a hell of a lot of bad ones, but there's also a lot of really good stories to tell.
Yeah, look, I agree. I'm hearing some really positive stories as well, but there's certainly some really tough ones sprinkled in there. It is amazing to see the optimism with so many people opening businesses or opening second businesses and as you say, acquiring with that view, that eye on the future. It's just a very mixed picture. But one thing that I wonder is, we love our indie restaurants. We love our neighbourhood restaurants. We love those restaurants that have that real character. I think it's something we pride ourselves on in Australia, but it is, we're also seeing more and more groups. I'm just wondering where you think the place of the indie restaurateur is at the moment, Belinda.
Well, you know what? It's tough. I think that an independent restaurant that is got their eye on the ball, that are really looking at their costs and making changes, are able to make a change in their business very quickly. What I do see is those larger operators, by the time their financial department and everything's come in, the figures have come in, sometimes it's quite a long time after the end of the month that they actually see those figures to say, oh, right, 3 weeks ago, this is what was happening. And yep, it's still continued to happen for the last 3 weeks, and that's not great. And because of their size and their scale, it makes a really big impact to their business. However, on the flip side of that, they're also able to buy things often much cheaper than the independent restaurant. With their size and their growth, they're able to kind of throw that weight around. And I think that often that does help them. They're able to have an IR department in-house. They're able to have a lot of extra positions that normally an independent restaurant wouldn't be able to have. I think a business owner who's a small business, or even small to medium, are having to wear about 20 caps, and that's tough. That they're having to swap hats, throughout the day, every day, and a lot of them are working very long hours. What I do think they need to be doing is sometimes looking at outsourcing, looking at technology, which can be quite scary. I think that technology, there's a bit of a fear. I think we've all had a bit of a fear of being burnt by technology and saying, look, I tried it, I invested a lot of money and it didn't work. But I think that we have to also look at some technology is really going to help you front of house and back of house, and not to replace stuff, but often to impact efficiencies in your business. And I think that's a very important thing that we do need to be looking towards to the future. But my heart's always with the independents. There's small restaurants. That's what community love. I think that when we talk about the restaurants that are doing and the cafes that are doing really well are the ones that have really invested in their local community. And they're the ones where the community respects that and loves that, invests back into them. And they're the ones that are often doing very, very well. They've got a story to tell. They're real, and I think that there's a balance there. But, I think there's pros and cons. But we see small businesses, particularly in, suburbs and regional areas, doing exceptionally well. And then, of course, you've got the big guys as well you see them opening multiple venues, and that does put a lot of consumer confidence and also business confidence. When you're a small operator and you see a very big operation happening around you and investment happening around you, it does give that business confidence to say, you know what, I know they're putting it all on the line, and I know that if they know something, I'm going to follow because I've got my heart. I know what my brand is. I believe in myself. I believe in my team, and I'm going to follow. And I think that also does really help with that business confidence, with businesses continuing to push on and put that foot on the pedal.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that I guess that sort of rising tide raises all boats kind of approach. Yeah, I like that. And I do think that some of the best indie restaurants at the moment have been able to really refine their identity, really, as you say, perhaps it's about a smaller menu, perhaps it's about reducing the hours, whatever it is, but just to really home in on who they actually are and what they want to deliver to their community. And I think when that message is really clear, then, that attracts people. And I mean, I suppose, as a restaurant critic, the question that I always ask when I visit a restaurant is, well, what is their project? What are they trying to do? Who are they? Who are they trying to be?
What's their purpose? Exactly.
Yeah, and are they succeeding on their own terms? And I feel like that it's that kind of clarity that is so attractive in a restaurant.
And I think also it leads to culture, right? Culture, you can feel good culture in a business that's operating well. If the team, you can see it, and that does also affect the consumers who are dining in the venue. And I think that's a really big, important part too, particularly when we know we've got this enormous staff shortage. There is no other place people want to be is in a place that has good culture.
Yeah. I mean, it brings me back to what you said about, the owners that are wearing 20 different hats and, whether, because everyone's so tight for staff, the owners are really working in the business in a lot of cases. And then in some ways they really are able to drive the culture, but in another sense, perhaps they're not able to play that over that they're not able to have that sort of HR overview and perhaps do some of that development and policy work around culture, which some of the groups are able to do. So it is a tricky balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really tricky. And I think with culture, I mean, I certainly spoke to a very big restaurant operator recently and said, I've got an amazing culture. My venues are all doing so well and the culture's incredible. Yet I talked to 10 staff and they all said the culture's great, not great at all. I'm not happy. So there's that also, because of that large size, that disconnect, because they think, yes, we tick the box. We asked everybody how their day was. I learned 3 staff members' names of what their kids were, and, I've ticked that box. I've made my deposit for the month. And that's not culture. That is so far from, you can't just say, I've done something once and then tick my box and moved on into something else. Culture is a commitment, and I think that in those larger venues, sometimes it does get watered down. And I think that they may think that they're operating a great culture and sometimes it may not be so great. But the smaller guys often can do it well.
That's so interesting. It's like, yes, you've paid for the staff to go out bowling one night, but that doesn't mean that everything's rosy and everyone feels super engaged in the business. Exactly.
And I think that's a really big part to I think, making you an employer of choice. How do we, when we're dealing with the fact of no staff, how do we help businesses recognize what their core strengths are to be able to make them an employer of choice, and how powerful that is in this time at the moment? And I think there's a whole lot of work there, and we're certainly have culture as our top 5 priorities to be working on and helping businesses understand how they can do it, what they need to do, and the importance of it.
Well, where do you start with that? What kinds of things do you say to businesses?
Well, it starts at the top, to be completely honest. I think it's about, as you said before, it's about understanding what is the purpose of my business? What am I here to really do? How do I involve my team? How do I communicate to them what that purpose is and make them part of that purpose? How do I have accountability across everybody so that if I'm not here working, if I'm out having to pick up, going into the markets at 4 a.m. and, in and out and trying to wear my 20 hats, how do I make sure that's operating when I'm not there? Well, that's about making everybody accountable. It's about making everybody part of the end goal and the vision and the solution and getting them on board with that. It's about transparency and honesty. There's a lot of things that a business operator can do with their team to be able to bring them along with the bigger picture, to help them understand that they're very much part of that end goal. And I think that is something operators often don't do. I think they try and hide the costs and they want to put their own head in the sand, let alone have to be open and transparent with their team. And they get confused about what their purpose and their vision is. And I think you throw a ball at somebody, they're going to catch it. You throw 4 at them or 5 at them, they're not even going to catch one. So you need to start small. You need to start small and build. You need to grow and make a small change every day. And that is going to be sustainable, and that will show the team, whatever change it may be, that we're making a change and I'm on board, and making them part of that end goal.
So just to try to make this a little bit concrete, Belinda, do you mean something like, okay, guys, we're going to try to have, a 5% increase spend in drinks this month? Is this the kind of sort of granular thing you're talking about?
Absolutely. It can be as small or big as what you like. It could be about the amount of people coming through the door. It can be about spend per head. It can be about increasing costs. It can be just about the transparency of where we are right now and what we need to do moving forward. It can be about what are we trying to achieve? Let's tick off some goals together, and also ask them, what's your opinion? How are we going? Get some input from the team. Feedback is so valuable. Your team are often the ones that are at the forefront, and they've often got the most valuable ideas as well. We don't always love feedback, but feedback's really good from our teams.
How do you think the hospitality industry is perceived?
This is my favourite topic, Dani.
Let's do it.
Oh, my God. So, let's be honest. The last, 10, 12 years, the industry's been totally demonised. It's that you're not going to get paid well, that your hours are unsociable, that's a terrible industry. And that's the mentality. That's what government's been saying. It starts at the top. So we've got a whole generation of kids coming through that are saying, God, don't want to look at that industry. Even my own kids brought home a piece of paper, last month and said, here's my career opportunities, Mum. What should I choose? And none of them were hospitality. And I was like, what the hell? Where's the school advisor? Get me on the phone. There is this whole perception that this is an industry that isn't a career opportunity. And this has started with government. And this is something, if we're saying now, look locally for staff, when there isn't a huge push at the moment for immigration opening up those floodgates, then we need to be doing something really about it, because it's not great. No parent says, I think you should be a chef, darling. No, what parent is saying that? And I think we're doing a really bad job of the perception of what we're doing, of those career paths and of those opportunities. And on the flip side, that we're also seeing a whole lot of people with a piece of paper walk into a business and start a job. They've never had a job before. And we've got this whole part of the corporate industry saying, on a separate note, okay, so you finished that task. You now need to do another one. Do you know how to work in a team? Do you know how to look at things? There is a whole perception of what the skills that you get in hospitality are lifelong skills, transferable skills. They are very valuable skills. And I think that all of us know how much we love hospitality, and it's about making sure we can change that perception. The word wellness would never have been used, 5-7 years ago in a kitchen. You would be locked in a cool room for 7 hours if you said that. Now there's a different phase. I see a lot of businesses trying to look at things differently because they have to. They need to. But we need to be really putting out that new perception of our industry and the benefits, the value add, the lifelong opportunities. And that's what we really need to be focusing on. It's a very big thing, and I'm working very hard at the moment with government on how we do that, on their involvement, and also working with our industry now on how we do this together as a team. It's not one business, it's not one, person that says this. It needs to be a collective push for the change. The change has got to be starting with us.
Yeah, because I suppose you sort of identified two parts to this bit of the puzzle. It's changing the perception, but then of course the thing that you're perceiving has to change as well. So, can those things happen at the same time?
Yes, definitely. I think that there's certainly a lot of work to be done, but there's a lot of people that want to be involved. I think that everybody has recognised that we've had a little bit of a hiccup here. This isn't great, and it's not what the future needs to look like. And there's a lot of talk. I think that every time that we're talking, at summits and roundtables and businesses together, they're all saying the same thing. We need to make sure we're, one, changing the perception in-house, but also changing the perception of engaging with people to come into the industry, how we do that and what we can do.
So, basically the solutions are kind of the same. It means good conditions, good pay, respect, valuing of the skills. Those things solve both of these issues, don't they? They solve the perception and they solve the industry that's being perceived.
And pathways and opportunities. And I think that there also the perception is you don't get paid well in hospitality, and I think that isn't quite true. I know that our industry is often quite well paid. And I think that needs to be talked about. I also think that there are things like tips that should be talked about. And, it's part of what those perks are. And there's a lot of positive things to talk about in our industry. And I think that it does start with government, but it also starts with industry as well, to be able to redefine what that looks like.
So you mentioned government, and obviously, restaurant and catering has the ear of government. Do you think with the new government that changes? Like, how does that relationship feel?
Well, it's definitely a new relationship. I think that at the end of the day, we need to make sure that the association not only works with Labor and the union movement and other industry bodies, as well as business, to find a pathway to work constructively with all stakeholders to get the best outcome for business and for employees. But I think that it's a really good opportunity because the change of government means a whole lot of new relationships. So that's great for us. I think that, we know that the sitting week is with the new government sitting at the end of July. We're very excited to go down, and we've already started meeting and finding our positions and working out what we need to do. And I think that there needs to be a number of reforms that need to be changed and implemented. And I think that they're quite keen to hear from us in ways that we can help and support that. I know that we've seen for too long government, after government is federal, state, territory has all thrown money into training and skills, and we've heard this is what's going to be happening again. But it doesn't always address the problems that we're faced of getting people into our industry and training, and we're very keen to work with them on what that looks like and how we can work together, and what we need to do from an immigration point of view and also a local point of view.
Well, can you point to any policy reforms you'd like to see in the immigration space?
Oh, my goodness. With the immigration, at the moment we know that there's about 16,500 applications. We know about more than half of those have been in the pipeline for over 19 months. We obviously think that this needs to be sped up significantly. We know that there's hundreds of stories from businesses. Families are separated. People who've been working for long periods of time went home for a funeral and couldn't get back. We need certainly some very big attention to this, and we need to speed up this process. We need the pathways of permanency sped up. We need the cost and the process and the red tape to be reduced. There's a whole lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm seeing great positive conversations, but I need them to happen, a little bit faster, and the actions to be made faster, because it's impacting our industry immensely.
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of people would welcome those words from you, Belinda. We're going to be hearing a lot from you through your new role, and I'd just love to know a little bit about your background. Like, what brings you into this kind of work?
Well, to be honest, I've always worked in hospitality. I think that it's something that I tried to get away from, as many people, think that you should get a real job back in the day. And I certainly have always had that pull and that love from a very young age. And I've worked in many roles, front and back of house, and had many opportunities that have led me from here and overseas, and I've been very blessed. But the one thing I definitely feel now is that there's a very big responsibility. I feel a big responsibility with this role. I always have. When I joined as COO, 3 years ago, way before COVID, there was a big responsibility now, and I feel it even more so. And I feel that because I understand how a business runs, and I understand the challenges, and I feel the passion and the love. And I also know that by being that voice, to be able to take that to government, to be able to enable change, and is a powerful one. And I certainly don't take it for granted. And I'm very blessed to be in the role and take it very seriously. And I value our industry, and I know how much it adds to the economic value to the country, but also to all of us individually, our small businesses, 55,000 businesses across the country. That's a lot. We employ at the moment about 350,000 people. We're short about 100,000 plus. And it's a big industry. And I think it's an exciting time to be a part of this change and movement. And as a true born hospo, I wear the hat very proudly.
Awesome. Love it. And Belinda, finally, can you tell me about a great meal you've had out recently?
Oh, a great meal I've had out recently. That's a good one. Well, anyone who knows the last few months of this role has kept me very, very busy. But to be honest, there's nothing that gives me greater pleasure is a very relaxed meal out with my family. It's one that is everybody sharing. It is often, I've been living in Newtown for the last 8 years. I think Newtown, we're very blessed to have some beautiful restaurants there, but none that makes me happier is one that I'm sharing with my family, where everyone's, orders what they want and everyone shares, has a glass of wine, not the kids, let's be honest. And that makes me the happiest of all. Fresh, good produce, good, friendly atmosphere. That's what, ticks my box. Of course, I get very blessed to eat in amazing restaurants everywhere, but that's what really makes me happy.
Love it. All right. Well, it's lovely to have the opportunity to catch up with you as you're fresh in the role. Look forward to seeing, what you can make happen, and hope to catch up again soon. Thanks so much for your time, Belinda.
Thanks, Dani. Really appreciate it.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This